good thing. Right. Ruth, welcome to Rethink Work.
Thank you for having me.
So you're going to come and talk about positive emotions and the key to well-being, which is obviously a huge topic at the moment. You've got a really interesting perspective on it, and you've got a book coming out about it all as well. So really looking forward to it. I'm going to hand over to you to share your wisdom.
Thank you. So before I kick off, I'll just let you know a little bit about me. My name is Ruth Kudzi. I am a multiple business owner, but really, so I own a training school and I'm a coach and mentor as well. But really, my passion is psychology. So I have been studying psychology for nearly 30 years. And over the last 15, I've been really focused on learning more about, actually to begin with, learning and the brain and everything else. And now a lot more about positive psychology and that impact it can have on our well-being. So the reason that I've got that interest is because I first started having issues with my well-being when I was about 12 or 13, and mental health issues. And from there, I then, later on when I was in my late teens, I got PTSD, which was incredibly severe, including anxiety, for probably about nearly 20 years. So I definitely come from the stance of, I know what it's like not to feel good. And my book, which is out on the 25th of May, is called How to Feel Better. And it's a self-coaching technique, 4-step technique that you can all use to make you feel better and solve problems. So I'm just going to stand up, because actually one of the ways that I feel better is by standing up. So what I'm going to be talking about is the power of positive emotions and happiness and how they link to success. So we're going to look at the impact they have on well-being and the brain and positive emotions. So when we're talking about positive emotions or positive effect, it's our propensity to experience positive emotions and interact with others and life challenges in a positive way. What it isn't always being positive. It isn't only feeling good. It isn't only feeling positive emotions. So I think that sometimes people can think like, okay, you're talking about happiness. It's quite a fluffy concept, or you're talking about positive emotion. But actually, it is the frequency and the propensity of us feeling those positive emotions. And it does kind of go without saying that the more that we feel positive emotions, the more that we feel good. And, okay, now we've got a science that studies it, but we probably all can realize that and can recognize, oh, actually, at those times in my life where I was feeling confident, where I was experiencing joy, where I was happy, where I was in a positive relationship, I actually felt better. So, the science backs up what we think. So I'd love a question to get you reflecting on the link between us feeling positive emotions and being higher on positive effect and performance. What do you believe that link is? If you're watching on replay, you can just reflect on that. Actually, there's been quite a lot of work that has been done on this idea of, okay, and today I was actually doing something on employee engagement and how important employee engagement is. So if we are happy at work, we're up to 13% more productive. So this was some research that was done at Sage Business School in Oxford Uni in 2019. And what they looked at is they looked at BT, the telecoms company, and they got people to rate their happiness each week. And what they found is those that were happier, their performance was 13% higher. So a significant difference in the performance of people that were happy and people who weren't happy. They also found, and obviously this is a UK study, that the weather really impacted performance and productivity as well. But we know from this study, and this was one of the first studies, that, okay, there's this link between performance and happiness. And in 2015, so a little bit before that, Warwick Business School also did a study into happiness and productivity. and they had 700 participants. So it's a slightly smaller sample size. And they found there's a 12% increase in performance. And one of the things that they said was happy workers work harder. And what I find interesting about both of these studies, and there's evidence that happiness leads to an increase in performance, is that we know that recently in the UK, they've had a big trial of 4-day work week. So if we're saying it's a 12 to 13% improvement in performance, if somebody is working 4 days rather than 5, they're losing 20% of their working time. But if we know if they're happy, then maybe that's only that are losing 7 to 8%. And there have been some studies that have, and actually most people, they're finding no dip in performance or an increase in performance. And one could hypothesize that that was because of the happiness. That one could hypothesize that because people are happier, because people's well-being is higher, therefore they are performing more effectively. And if we're thinking about this as well, not only are they performing better when they're at work, but happy employees tend to be more engaged, and engaged employees tend to do much better on things like absenteeism. Engaged employees turn up to work. Engaged employees engage in their work. Engaged employees are less likely to look for a different job. Engaged employees are more loyal. Engaged employees also perform better. So what we can see is there's this relationship with happiness, which actually links into a lot of these HR measures that we're always looking to improve: employee retention, employee engagement, reduction in sickness, increase in tenure, especially of those people that are high performers. So what actually makes people happy at work? It's great to know that there's a relationship, but what is going on? So Keltner et al. In 2014 and beyond have really built up this thing about the foundations of happiness at work. And they've done a lot of research into this. And what they found is there are 4 main pillars which actually help people feel more happy at work. So first of all, it's that one that we see quite a lot. It's purpose. How are you, first of all, as an individual, how are you really connected with the purpose of what you do? How do you see the bigger picture? How do you see that your skills and your abilities and all of those things actually impact what you're doing and motivate you? And when you're working in an organization, if you're leading a team, how are you supporting everybody in that team to understand and appreciate what is the purpose of doing all of this? What is the meaning? What is the direction that we want to go on? So purpose is critical. Understanding personal purpose, but also understanding how that maps out into other things. And then engagement. Engagement is such an interesting thing. So there's some research done that when we multitask, it can decrease our cognitive abilities and our IQ by up to 10 points. And in a world where we are often inundated with methods of communication, things like Slack and instant messenger, email, what we're doing is we're reducing people's ability to focus, and we're reducing their engagement. But equally, to be engaged in work, we need to have work that matches our abilities. We need to have work that is interesting to us and matches our skill set and strengths. So again, engagement is one of those things that's very personal when you're thinking about designing your perfect work, but also when we're looking at job design. I know something that I do with my team, who are very small, but we look at, okay, I ask people, what parts of the role do you really enjoy and what parts don't you? And I've got a team of 5 people who are all doing a very similar job. And I could have assumed that some people liked certain things and some didn't. And actually what I found with those 5 people is that they all had different preferences. So what we were able to do is pretty much help people design their job within those preferences. And guess what? That increases engagement, happiness, and performance. And even me personally, knowing about the different elements that I do in my role, when I'm doing the things that I enjoy and I'm good at, and they usually go hand in hand, when I've got the ability to work in a way that I know I'm not going to be distracted, I'm more engaged. And therefore I'm happier and I get more done. And then this is an interesting one, resilience. And I think that this is really a cultural construct as well. Because sometimes you say the word resilience and people go, oh, because resilience has been, especially in the UK, especially in the public sector, sometimes a bit of a stick to beat people with. Well, you need to be more resilient, which means you need to work harder with less resources, and you need to basically stop complaining. But actually, when we're looking at resilience in this context, we're looking at that ability to learn, that ability to take a step back, that ability to see the bigger picture, and that ability to be truly emotionally resilient, which includes things like looking after self-care and well-being, and actually, creating environments where it's okay to make a mistake. I knew that I'd hired a great member of staff when she messaged me to say, I've made a mistake. What do I do? Even better, it's when people say what they are going to do, but sometimes people need that direction as well. So creating spaces that foster building more resilient workers, building more resilience into the system, and also demonstrating that by, as leaders, being vulnerable, by actually, lots of these things that we think are, really day to day, but modeling. Okay, if we're talking about self-care being a pillar of resilience, are we putting our gym appointments in our calendar? Are we modeling going out for lunch? Are we modeling leaving the office, and even doing that remotely? Because again, that is going to help other people realize that it's okay to do those things. So a lot of this is coming from modeling in teams as well. And then kindness. Actually, we are happier at work when there is a culture of kindness, when people value relationships, when people are able to have the space to build those relationships. And what I find interesting about this research as well is that we often can get really inundated as leaders in the workplace because we have got so many conflicting demands. And sometimes we can think, okay, well, this is going to take time to build. And we've got our back against the wall because we've got so many conflicting pressures. What I would say to you is to think about the long-term investment of actually building in checkpoints with people, of having that more human approach to work, of being compassionate when people have got things going on. Because I tell you what, the research and individuals say that the more that we are able to be compassionate to others and empathetic, the more that we value our workforce, especially if they've got those other ingredients, the happier they're going to be. And I don't think I've ever met a leader who doesn't want their workforce to be happy. But sometimes we can get that conflict that we think it's either spending and investing the time to support people to build their happiness, or it's about spending and investing the time working on performance measures. And what I'm saying today is actually, if we're spending that time supporting people so they have got the structures to be happy at work, and if we're actually looking at data from things like employee engagement surveys and making sure that employees know that we're valuing them and we're valuing their happiness, then we can increase performance in a much more strategic, longer term way. And so a lot of this also links into models as well, and positive psychology models, like the PERMA model, or the PERMA Plus model now, or the PERMA H model that was created by Martin Seligman probably about 20 years ago. And he looked at this for individuals, and then he also looked at this at work. And he said, how can we increase well-being? How can we actually make sure that we are living the best that we can, the best lives that we can live? And again, you're going to see the same words coming up. Positive emotion. Okay. If we increase our frequency of positive emotion, we feel better. Engagement in what we're doing. There, it's there again. Relationships, which links to that kindness and that compassion and building relationships with people. I'm sure that we all have got instances where we've worked in environments where we felt we don't have positive relationships. And that impacts, whether we want to show up at work in the most extreme circumstances. But relationships is also about, that resilience and that modeling within those relationships when things don't always work out. And actually it being okay to have conflict and to manage conflict and all of that kind of thing as well. And then we have meaning and purpose again. We're having quite a lot of repetition. And then it's accomplishments and actually feeling and celebrating those accomplishments too. This is a well-being model. And so many people are looking at well-being, but they're not looking at it in this way. Because well-being, again, is dependent on the individual. How does the individual actually see themselves in terms of their happiness and well-being? And what do they feel they need? Because when we listen to other people, when we listen to our employees, then that can be the key for change. So we can support people to start to build some of these behaviors in the workplace. And that might be, actually bringing in more mindfulness practice, more meditation, helping people engage more in what they do. If people are more mindful and engaged in their work, they can increase their joy, they can reduce their depression, and it enhances their mood. So again, how can we facilitate this in the workplace? Is that about giving people space? Is it about creating things like mindfulness courses? But if we're doing that, how are we helping people really see the benefit? Because we have to get buy-in here. We have to get other people to think, okay, what is the purpose of me doing this? And what's the purpose of me engaging? So we need to look at that bigger picture. And we need to understand that when we're looking at interventions to support our employees to be happier, we need to really think about the way that we do this. Because yes, we can measure data. Yes, we can ask them, how happy are you? And we can look at their outcomes. But then we want to drill down into what else can we be doing? How can we be supporting people? And this can come down to individual differences, because it might be that mindfulness is really successful for some of our employees. There's a growing body of evidence that mindfulness can be incredibly impactful for people who've got ADHD, for example. That isn't going to be our whole student body or population. Sorry, I was going back to university there. I was talking to a university group earlier. That isn't going to be our whole employee group. So it's thinking about the interventions and what you're doing that relate to the needs of the groups that you've got. And it's also about this measurement. Often we look at happiness as a construct and we don't look at actually how can we lay the foundations and how can we ensure that what we're doing has a positive impact. So this might be that we're actually using something like a workplace PERMA to assess where people are in terms of the different things that we've spoken about, the positive emotion, the engagement, the relationships, the meaning, and the accomplishments. And then thinking globally within the organization about the actions we can take, and then helping people with that individual action plan. Because the more that we are able to empower our employees and give them autonomy, actually, again, that feeling of autonomy can increase happiness, as long as people have got the skills and the abilities to do what they want to do. And they feel like they've got that relationship and relatedness too. So how does this all work? How do I stop my slides? Do I just go like that? There we go. Just want to stop them now. I don't know how I do that. I was like, I just want to stop the slide. See, I just see you. And now I don't know what I've done. Anyway, I'll just keep them up there. I'll go back to that one. So in terms of how does this all work? So happy people perform better. Happy people are more effective. Happy people are easier to be around. Happy people are going to stay in your organization. So why? Why does this work? Why is happiness so this construct that has so many positives? Well, actually, it's a number of factors. So again, we have that social inclusion. When we feel part of a group, then we're more likely to want to be able to participate in that group and to stay in that group. So if we're getting positive benefits from being in a group at work, a team, an organization, then we're more likely to want to stay. Because our brain is craving the dopamine that we get from that feeling of being part of something bigger. So if we're thinking about this from a brain chemistry point of view, the way that our brain works, as Evian Gordon from Brain Research says, is we always move towards pleasure and away from pain. So when we're making decisions, it's about how is this going to help me feel good rather than how is this going to help me avoid pain. And very much in organizations, we have been much more about the stick than the carrot, haven't we? Like, okay, these are the things that you can't do. But if we change the thinking to be, how do we reward and incentivize people to move towards, then we can start to think about creating those spaces that actually will allow employees to be happy and employees to thrive. Did you know that in the UK, AXA did a survey about, I think it was completed in 2022. And in that survey, they looked globally at employees. And they looked at how many employees were happy and were flourishing and were feeling really good, were thriving. And they looked at how many were really struggling. And they looked at how many who were languishing. So languishing is really where you're just like, you're on the edge of going into struggling. And what they found is across all of the nations where they did this, and they did this in Europe, the US and the UK, they found that the UK came bottom or maybe top of people who were struggling. So we had, I think it was about 20% of people who were struggling. About 1/5 of the workforce are struggling. And then on top of that, an extra 25%, so another quarter, so nearly 50% of the workforce are currently languishing or struggling, which means that they're not happy, which means that they're not performing at their best. And this data was pretty stark. It was the worst performing country in the world. So why is that? There's probably a myriad of different factors that play into this. But equally, if we have employees, if we can support them in ways to actually start to prioritize their well-being and their happiness, we can move people from languishing to thriving. And this is the thing, this is the part that I find really interesting, that if we start to work with people, as soon as they come into organizations, if we work with organizations now where we've got a bulk of people who are okay, but if we get them to be more engaged, to be happier, to be prioritizing their well-being, then we have the opportunity to be one of the highest performing nations in the world. But we need to want to do this. We need to engage managers in doing this. We need to make people understand that this isn't just a nice to have stick on. This is about human potential and human capital. And I don't think that any manager that I've ever worked with has wanted their teams to be unhappy or have wanted people to be stressed or to be sick. That isn't what anybody wants. But we're often under so much pressure that we believe that we need to behave in a certain way to get the most out of our teams. And we believe that that stick can be more effective than the carrot. But actually, if we're looking at our brains, if we are supporting people to move towards reward, if we are creating opportunities where they're able to associate positive behavior with reward, then we're actually collectively rewiring the culture of the organization. And if we are happy, we're actually able to tap into all of the prefrontal areas of our brain, which is where our deep thinking, our problem solving, our focus and our memory reside. So from a neuroscience perspective, happy employees are more productive because they're able to use their brains more effectively. They also have lower levels of stress, and stress is the biggest predictor of sickness. The majority of people in the UK who are not working, it's because of stress. So what I'm going to say to you as a leaving remark is, if you were to look at your organization and you were to ask people about their relative happiness, and they knew that they could provide that data with full transparency and safety, and there wouldn't be anything that would come back to them, how many people do you think would be rating themselves as at least a 7 out of 10? And then if you think about, if you prioritize this as a leader and an organization, and you were able to get people to shift, what impact would that have on your organization? Both making it a nicer place to work for everyone, but also meaning that the performance levels will go up. I know the type of organization that not only I want to create, and we were, I think last time we did this in my business, we were an 8.5. For me, I want to be a 10. So we're an average 8.5, but also a business that customers want to engage with, a business where people stay, a business where performance is at the heart of what everyone does, because people are in the right roles and they're doing what they want to be doing, where they're building emotional resilience, where they're building connection and kindness, and where ultimately they're happy. That's the type of organization that I like to support people to build and that I want to run.